Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business Line State of Economy podcast series. Today, we have with us our distinguished guest, Professor Ashwini Chhatre, Executive Director of the Bharti Institute of Public Policy. Professor Chhatre, who also chairs the Institutional Review Board at the Indian School of Business, will break down for us and our listeners how can India's forests contribute to its green energy transition. He has studied at the graduate school at the Duke University, from where he was awarded a PhD in political science. In fact, in 2006-07, he became the first Giorgio Ruffalo postdoctoral fellow in sustainability science at the Harvard University. Before joining the Department of Geography and Geographic Information Science at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, Professor Chhatre's main research interests lie in exploring the intersection of democracy, environment, and development, with a focus on decentralized forest governance, climate change vulnerability and adaptation, and multifunctional agriculture. He is perhaps one of the best persons to help us understand how bioenergy can be leveraged. And this is very critical. Why? Because the International Energy Agency says that modern bioenergy accounts for 13% of India's total energy consumption at present, and which will go up to as high as 45% by the end of this decade. But to meet these long-term bioenergy ambitions, there is a need to deploy new technologies and practices and to collect and convert these vast feedstock potentials into sustainable biofuels. So without wasting much time, I'll straight away go to Professor Chhatre. Welcome, Professor Chhatre. Pleasure to have you here, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored and I'm excited to share my views.
Sir, the first question that comes here is, how critical is bioenergy for India's decarbonization journey?
Well, how critical? What is the highest category in critical that you can think of? I don't think anything is more critical than bioenergy from 2 points of view. One, because of the existing technology, we don't have to wait for new technology to develop before we can use existing resources and deploy existing technology. And two, we have a decarbonization precipice. So if we don't reduce emissions quickly, our possibility of grave, catastrophic climate change increases. And bioenergy is just there, it's ready. So therefore, it is critical on both counts, extremely critical.
And in this endeavor, sir, how can forests evolve as hubs of these bioenergy production? How can we commercialize them if we can?
That is my point of departure. There's a lot of, almost all focus on bioenergy is concentrated on farmlands. And I have taken a different perspective and perhaps road, is to look at forests. Administratively, forest land comprises about 23% of the Indian land mass. And for a variety of very good reasons, about 50 years ago, we decided as a country to put it out of the production economy. At that time, it was a very good idea. Our environment movement was nascent. The world itself was sort of beginning to recognize the importance of conservation and protection of natural resources. We had been very careless in how we used our own natural resources. Well, we have been careless since then as well. But around the mid-1970s, we started in India a process of restraint where we put forests out of the production zone. And at that time, it was a very good idea. Now, we have learned our lesson. We have had 50 years of experience of governance, of decentralization, of local community involvement, of environmental awareness, of legal protections. And it is time to use this vast 23% of India's landmass to use in our decarbonization strategy. I think it is foolish to not consider it as our top priority because it's just there and we have the experience and the knowledge to use it correctly, appropriately, and sustainably.
Right. So, Professor Chhatre, your team was showing when I was speaking with your team, there was a huge body of work that your team is doing on various products, commodities coming out of forests. So Professor Chhatre, could you break down for our listeners, what products and services forests can offer us in the future, and as you say, they can become hubs of bioenergy production.
There are three streams that I would like to bring your attention to. When we think of energy, very often, especially those of us who sort of are more attuned to conversations, tend to think of electricity first. But a lot of our energy requirements are non-electricity related, and some of the feedstock for electricity production can also come from biomass. The first strand in thinking about forests as hubs of bioenergy is in transportation fuel. So it produces biodiesel or feedstock for biodiesel. For example, India has millions of hectares of standing sal forest, Shoria robusta, the seeds of which produce an oil that is a precursor and a feedstock for biodiesel. And that technology exists, it's sort of commercially viable. And because of the heavy subsidies for petroleum-based diesel and actually effective positive taxes on biodiesel, it is sort of just about commercially viable and competitive with petroleum-based diesel. All we need to do is rethink how our subsidies are structured, because that feedstock is all over central India, for example. Similarly, India has about 25 million hectares of forest land that has no trees. We all know about it, we talk about it, we sort of are concerned about it. We have reforestation programs that fail miserably because there is no incentive to protect these saplings or plantations. These can be bioenergy plantations. So think about bamboo plantations. Now, bamboo is a fantastic feedstock for ethanol. And it is native. It grows really well in rain-fed conditions. And these forest lands are really exactly the kind of places where bamboo will actually lead to a lot of positive outcomes. It will produce bamboo for ethanol. It will sequester carbon below ground because it's a perennial grass, all said and done. And it will also produce all kinds of ecosystem benefits in terms of water regulation and pollination services and local biodiversity and so on. Those are just two that we think of. So transportation fuel. Second is coal substitutes. Again, bamboo, but a lot of other forest products such as seeds and kernels and even timber in many cases from branches, etc., are direct substitutes for coal in so-called hard-to-abate sectors like thermal power and cement. And corporations are looking for these alternatives because the gross calorific value of these forest products is much higher than that of agricultural residues like rice straw or wheat straw that have been tried so far. And the third major stream, in addition to sort of coal substitutes and transport fuel, is the growing demand for plastic alternatives and substitutes. And sort of instead of thinking of nylon or rayon as textiles, bamboo textiles are now the rage. So you go to any online retail store and look for bamboo textiles and you get the best quality towels or shirts or linen or whatever. Similarly, many other ways in which biomass-based substitutes that can be grown in forests are now commercially viable plastic substitutes. All of these contribute directly to decarbonization. And forests is where they can be grown most easily. So I rest my case.
Yeah. So Professor Chhatre, you ended where you stopped was on the bamboo side. Sir,
Yeah.
there was one thing that I thought I'll share with you and seems relevant. Sir, the Numaligarh refinery, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and even now NTPC, they're working, and the road ministry, so they're working on producing ethanol from bamboo. And
Yeah.
what Mr. Nitin Jairam Gadkari says is that right now it's costlier than what normal production numbers are. So how do you look at this? Can we make this economic? Because the Numaligarh refinery people say that there is a very good chance that it can become economically, commercially viable, sir. So how do you view this?
I have two counter arguments to this fact. The first is that the price of petrol right now is not a reflection of its true cost because
Right.
of the heavy subsidies that accompany its production. So if the same amount of subsidies were provided to ethanol production at the scale at which petrol is being produced, it will be a lot cheaper than petrol. A straight up price comparison is just plain unfair. It's not a level playing field right now. The second argument is that petroleum and its derived products like petrol and diesel have really no co-benefits. I mean, there are some co-benefits like paraffin, for example, and so on, which are anyway going to be substituted by other biomass-based, forest-based products. Compared to that, a bamboo economy can benefit local communities, can benefit wildlife habitats, can benefit water cycles, can regulate floods, and there are so many other carbon sequestration and so on. All of these, if costed and accounted for, will, I have no doubt, clearly demonstrate that per liter of ethanol is far superior and beneficial to society than a liter of petrol.
Right. So that is actually, I think, also is because we need a new perspective. One thing that, sir, I have picked up from the conversation I'm having with you and had with your team is your focus on community, and and so I thought that the next question should be, how, and you've been pressing on it, is how can community ownership aid in expanding this, the whole scenario about bioenergy products and services from forests. How do you think community ownership can come here?
So I think it is necessary for bioenergy to make a meaningful contribution, and there is one big reason for this. It is because natural resources are subject to what is known as tragedy of the commons. Right? We can over harvest it. It's just like mining the resource. We can take away all the sal seeds and leave nothing behind, so regeneration will suffer and ecosystems will not be able to reproduce themselves. And if we don't do that, then forests are no longer forests, then they are just rows of trees, and they don't provide us with the benefits that we derive right now. So we have to maintain forests as ecosystems, not as factories. In order to prevent this tragedy of the commons and sort of race to the bottom, you extract as much as possible in order to make a profit today. If we have local communities who benefit from the forest, so this is the alternative paradigm, is that they will benefit if the forest is growing, not when the forest is declining, and set in place a set of institutional incentives and recognition. Is that, hey, you own the forest. It's just like a farmer. If you're a tenant, you don't take care of the farmland. If you're an owner, you actually invest in maintaining its fertility and improving its productivity. If we trust communities and then invest in them, build their capacity, sort of secure and recognize their cultural values that already exist for forest protection and environmental conservation, that creates a foundation for continued benefits from nature. Without that, we reduce it to becoming a factory, and then in 20 years, we will back to square one. Communities must own the forest.
Professor Chhatre, is a great comment from you. But I think what has happened in the country, what last 20 years, what we have seen, I've been covering infrastructure for the last 20 years, we have not been able to build a bridge between the forest, the community, or business interests, or the ownership of land. I think songs like Mati Nahi Debo, Ghar Nahi Debo have been a child of such clashes or conflicts that have happened around ownership of forests. And this subject has been, I think it's been critical ever since India was independent. But in the last 20 years, sir, as our infrastructure has expanded, we have seen more conflicts happening in this particular space. And here the role of government seems to, government is trying, and it's not that the government is not trying to, but so where do you think an intervention come, because we've been having this for the last 50, 60 years. Do you think there is a way where we can peacefully coexist, or is it too much to ask in such a rapidly expanding economy which needs so much resources?
There are two ends to this spectrum, and what you are referring to is in the middle. So this is where the conflict is. This is where we have a zero-sum game, where it's either forest or development. You can't have both, right? What I am proposing is on the other two extremes, on both sides of this middle. On the one extreme is standing forests with a lot of poverty, right?
Yes.
After 75 years of independence, we still have a very high correlation of dense forest and high poverty. That is where the poor people live. That is where the Adivasis and Dalits live, and so on. They are also the ones who need our support the most in terms of human development.
So,
Right? That is not where most of the conflict is. On the other extreme is completely denuded landscapes, which is forest in name only. There is a forest department board there, but no tree, not even sometimes grass. Right? There is no conflict because there is nothing to gain for anyone. It's a positive sum game on both sides. So here we can grow bamboo on this extreme, and on that extreme, we can actually build from the bottom up. Before there is any conflict, we can put in place systems, and governments are actually keen. We need to understand where it will work and where it will not work. If we go to mining areas, obviously this will not work because it's a zero-sum game. You can either have a mine or a forest. You can't have both at the same time. So we are working with several state governments, and the response is very positive. And I will also go one step further as to why the response is positive. It's because what we are proposing is a positive sum game. It's creating jobs, creating wealth without cutting down forest. And I mean, who is going to say no to that?
So Professor Chhatre, as you were saying that you're helping a lot of state governments in this. Sir, in your interactions with these officials and all, what are the challenges that they are facing, and what solutions can you help offer them to tide over them? Have you in your discussions challenges the government faces in sir, promoting a bioenergy economy in the sense that you are saying?
The challenges are old. They are the same challenges. It's nothing surprising. I can share with you the three dimensions on which the challenges exist, as usual. The first challenge is inertia. You want to do anything new that requires more than three departments to talk to each other. That is a Herculean task inside government. Right? That's true everywhere. State, center, sort of the whichever party, it doesn't matter. That is how governments work. And you have to sort of undertake that extra effort. And that is what we do as ISB, is provide a sort of neutral but also trustworthy external facilitator. So we don't have skin in the game. We are not there to make profit or money or win elections or whatever. We are there to create impact. So everyone trusts us. We build that trust, and it helps us bring together different departments that are generally not used to working with each other. And that's always a challenge in government, wherever. The second big challenge is sort of old ways of doing things, such as transit permits are required for bamboo to cross a border.
True, sir.
I mean, some of these rules were designed a long time ago and they have not been updated, and sort of just trying to bring the regulatory and the sort of legal system up to speed requires an overhaul. And that takes time. And of course, it should take some time. It should not be overnight and rough and ready, because it needs to be true to the spirit of the laws of the land and so on, and it needs to take into account multiple vested interests, etc. But this is the second big challenge that is always there, is that there are rules, there are sort of permits, there are licenses, there are all kinds of things, and they are there because they have always been there. And someone has to sort of make that extra effort to reform and to reconcile these discrepancies. So that's two out of those three that are well known. The third one is fear of technology. And sort of we go in with a very clear proposition that whatever we do will have a digital backbone, and that it provides transparency, it provides traceability, it provides sort of trust through sort of blockchain architecture and so on. We bring in advanced sort of machine learning and AI technologies to estimate resource inventories. How much bamboo is there? We use photographs that are taken by forest guards in the forest department and combine it with satellite data and machine learning, and we get a fairly precise estimate of how much bamboo is available in which village. Unfortunately, government departments are reluctant, almost to the point of fear, to engage with this level of modern technology. So when you talk at the top, the CMs, for example, or the chief secretaries and principal secretaries and so on, they are very savvy, they are well trained, they are exposed, they all welcome technology. But it sort of has not been easy to adapt the processes of government to adopt new technology. That has been a different challenge. So all three of these together make it somewhat more challenging than usual.
That's very insightful, Professor Chhatre. Before we end this, I know you have brought up the issue of challenges and jobs earlier in your narrative, sir. Just to end and just to get it, the Indian government is committed. They say they are committed to double farmers' income, and double. They've also want to increase income of what the Jal Shakti and other ministries say, and mind is forest dependent communities. Uh, you seem to be some of the people who have deep insights into this. Are we walking the right path? Are we tackling those challenges that are coming, or do you think the government? I know it's a difficult question for an academic, but do we need to do something more, change mind? Because something which I think is coming from a narrative is that we need to change our mindsets also and look from a fresh perspective at things or forests or bioenergy. Do you find I'm sorry, my question is a little complex, but I thought I would ask you that are we on the right path, or do we need to alter our mindsets or review the way we are looking at things? The general public also as well, sir, because once the public with electric vehicles, people are becoming more savvy about environment and pollution. So can the same things come in this forest economy, Professor Chhatre?
I believe so. I think we are not going in the wrong direction. Let me start with that. I'm certain. We need to wean ourselves from this fetish of the farmer. Many of our countrymen are farmers, but far less than what we imagine. What we have is people who do many things, one of which is growing crops. And what we have, and this is a historical blunder, what we have is a tendency to call anyone who grows crops a farmer, when actually most of their income may come from fishing or forest produce collection or casual labor or uh, migratory labor or sheep and goat and livestock and so on. Just because someone is growing crops, I think we just call them farmer and mislead ourselves. And we also neglect the ingenuity of these same people in putting together a robust livelihood that is diversified across multiple resources. There are 4 goats, they also collect forest produce, they also migrate for some casual labor seasonally and so on. I think the first step that we need to take is away from thinking that everyone who grows crops is a farmer. It's just misleading.
Sure.
The forest economy is a clearest demonstration of that, because there is a sort of very large section of the population. So think about central India from west to east, the entire Adivasi belt. A significant proportion of their incomes comes from forests.
True.
Collecting products and selling it in the local market, and all of it is restricted to specific seasons, and they have built a livelihood around it. We have been blind to it, and if we just pay attention, there are so many jobs that are just waiting to be unleashed and created in this economy. But because we are focused on farmers, because these people are farmers as well, they grow crops in the Kharif season, we just get misled into helping them as farmers, when we actually will be much better served if we help them as forest dependent people.
I think that's a great roundup, because for me and my listeners, we'll take home one. We need a fresh perspective on forests, how forests, in fact, even before that, what you've spoken about, the way farming is done of farmers, I think that's a great thing, because we need to change our mindsets and look at it fresh. Thank you, Professor Chhatre, for such an insightful breakdown of the forest economy. Thank you. Great to have you with us, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was great. Good questions. I love talking about it.